Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Asia Solar Energy for Climate Change Conference, a platform dedicated to harnessing the power of renewable energy in our fight against climate change. This conference is organized by CarbonCare InnoLab and funded by the Jockey Club Charities Fund. My name is Claudia Lee, and I'm honored to be your moderator for this exciting panel discussion. In this session today, we'll be focusing on the energy transition in the Asia Pacific, and we'll look specifically at cross-border collaboration for sustainable energy deals. And now I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speakers for today, Dr. Daphne Ma, Ms. Wai-Fan Ho, and Mr. Jerry Arancis. Our first guest, Dr. Daphne Ma, is the director of the Asian Energy Study Center at the Hong Kong Baptist University. Dr. Ma was named by Stanford University as one of the world's top 2% of scientists in 2022. And her research focuses on the social aspects of our smart energy transitions. She also looks at the intersection between energy technologies, energy governance, and sustainability policy studies. Our second guest is Ms. Wai-Fan Ho, who is a member of Soulmunity. She's also a policy specialist and an ESG analyst. Ms. Ho initiated the renewable energy advocacy group Soulmunity to lobby for multilateral actions to achieve carbon neutrality and also mobilize green economies. As a renewable energy advocate, she also regularly contributes to local media to help shape local and regional environmental policies. And finally, last but not least, we also have Mr. Jerry Arancis with us. He is the founder and executive director of the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development, also known as the CEED in the Philippines. As an environmental advocate, Mr. Arancis has rallied governments, companies, and global finance institutions concerning climate and sustainability issues. At the CEED, he's focusing his attention on the three pillars of transformative energy, ecological justice, and people-centered development. So in this session, we'll be covering opportunities and challenges of cross-border energy collaboration, the important role of renewable energy deals and policies that will move us towards a more sustainable future, and we'll also look into some examples of renewable energy policies in Asia. I'll start the panel. Well, the panel will start with a sharing by each of the speakers, who will share insights from all of the work that they've done on energy policies, followed by a short moderated session by myself, and then afterwards we'll open the floor to any Q&As from the audience. So now I'm very excited to bring this session to you, and we'll start off with a sharing by our first speaker, Dr. Daphne Ma.
Hello, good day to everyone. Let me first thank the organizer for inviting me to join this discussion, and I'm very pleased to have an engaging dialogue with other panelists and participants of this section. Now, let me share my screen. Now, what I'd like to share with the panel today is a top presentation about the regional energy transitions with a focus on the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. It's a regional kind of geographical scope of our energy transition studies. And I'm a trained energy social scientist, so I'd like to share more of our findings from the social perspective. So I would like to have a discussion on the social implications and the challenge of public engagement. In other words, how to engage the public in Hong Kong when we explore the regional opportunities. I myself is the director of the Asian Energy Studies Center, and we have been working on a number of research projects. Today, I'd like to focus on three of our recent projects that we work on the analysis on from a cross-border regional perspective. The first one, as you can see, is a consultancy project that we commissioned by the Chinese Academy in the mainland China. Then it's about Hong Kong and this Greater Bay Area opportunities. And the second project is a policy study that was funded by the Hong Kong SAR government. In that project, we finished a couple of years ago. We explore to what extent local communities in Hong Kong can produce solar electricity. And the third project is one that we finished during the pandemic. We focus on the sustainable energy transition, and at that time, in this project, we have the opportunities to conduct a survey in Hong Kong to get the public perceptions on the cross-border opportunities. Now, a bit of the context of today's discussion is that regional energy development in Hong Kong, as well as from the broader perspective in the regional, the Greater Bay Area, is really nothing very new. Back in 2 or 3 decades ago, as you can see, Guangdong and Hong Kong has been kind of designated or encouraged by the mainland China that we are the kind of pioneer in green living. And of course, the very important government document from this central government is the outline of the development plan for the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area that was published in year 2019. And you can see the map. This is the Greater Bay Area, and Hong Kong is somewhere here. And you can see the whole Bay Area, the regional scope of this area is Hong Kong with 10 neighboring cities in Guangdong. The first finding that from our collection of projects that I'd like to share with you is that from this project, we did identify that with the regional collaboration between Hong Kong and the 10 neighboring cities in the Greater Bay Areas, there are really a wide range of new possibilities that we can explore when we look for energy transition futures, ranging from technological innovation. We're talking about, of course, solar power, and of course, it also touch upon much more sophisticated system like smart metering, how the whole system can be integrated between renewable energy, demand side management, that sort of thing. And from the industrial perspective, there are a lot of green industrial development potential, and of course, carbon market opportunities. And with all these new possibilities, we really need a much better and comprehensive energy plannings and infrastructural support in this region. Now, the big question that we can pull out from that first project is that regional perspective, of course, is something very promising, but somehow the local solution, to what extent that the balance between the local options and the regional solutions is something very critical. And then we find that these difficult decisions may be a source of social conflicts when we start to look for regional perspective, because there is a tension. Of course, we can see that local solutions and regional opportunities could be something very synergistic, can complement each other. But on the other hand, there could be a trade-off between these two options. So it's really a matter that we need to have a discussion with the public in Hong Kong. Because regional collaborations seems to be very promising, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people who may challenge that. Have we really maximized the opportunities in the local projects? Have we done our very best before we look for the easy or easier solutions from the region? Now, with that in mind, I'd like to share with you the findings from our second project. That is, as I briefly mentioned, that is a public policy project funded by the Hong Kong government. This project will focus on the local potential of solar communities development. In that project that we completed a couple of years ago, we find that two very promising communities in Hong Kong. As you can see, one is Fairview Park in Yuen Long, and the second one is Ho Nok Yuen in Tai Po, another part of the new territories in Hong Kong. These may be to friends who are not from Hong Kong, it may catch you in a bit surprise that Hong Kong, actually we have no really shortage of good sites for community solar. As you can see that like Farrier Park is a cluster of 5,000 houses there, one of the perfect sites for community solar developments in Hong Kong. And Honolulu Unity, another kind of low-rise housing areas. Now, the findings, of course, today we won't have time to go through that, but the key message is that through solar assessment that we've done in these two communities, we find that Hong Kong communities do have substantial solar resources, and then we can quantify how much solar resources are available around in Hong Kong, and these are the number that you see that these communities, we estimated that they can generate 60 megawatts of solar. To make sense of it, to put things into context, just these two communities, they can produce power that is large enough in quantity that can contribute to one tenth of the Hong Kong government's solar target by 2030. So we're talking about two communities only, and then we haven't really considered other low-lying, low populated density communities in Hong Kong. Now, the third report findings that I'd like to share with you is the one that we recently finished is about the solar futures in Hong Kong. In that project, we engaged the Stanford team. So we use a kind of specialized online platform, which is called deliberative polling. And this is an online version. You see the methodology. We recruit about 170 of Hong Kong residents to that half-day online discussion, and then they were engaged in small group discussion and then large group plenary sections with experts answering their questions. And then before and after the workshop, they help us to fill in the questionnaires. The key findings is that when we asked participants after their discussion, and then we asked them to pick their preference on the solar futures in Hong Kong. And then we offered three options. One is business as usual. One is moderate target. That means that the solar target will increase from the existing 1.5% to 4%, to the third option that is a very ambitious target, that is 21%, with the import renewable as an option. Okay, so the interesting findings is that Hong Kong people, after they were engaged in the discussion, they tend to be quite modest in solar futures. Most of them, they pick the modest solar, and they were conscious to go for ambitious solar, while they don't like the existing situation of solar development. And then people raise concerns about importing renewable, and that explain why quite a number of them, they did not support ambitious solar. The main concerns about importing renewable, that imply the challenges for regional collaboration with renewable, is that two big questions. Number one is that they questioned whether we have already tried our very best about the local generation. They have a view that we need to prioritize local options on top of the importing renewable option. Secondly, they worry that whether if we really import renewable energy from the mainland China, would Hong Kong have has sufficient policies or regulatory mechanisms to make sure that all imported renewable will come from good renewable? Okay, so I think these are the key findings that I would like to share with you, and these are the policy implications a wide range of policies need to be in place if we really are seriously exploring and implementing renewable energy collaboration. And policy legitimacy would be important. The Hong Kong government and the power companies, at least, they need to make a very good and clear place that local options have already fully explored, and then that's why we have very strong reasons to look for regional collaboration. So I think these are the key findings I'd like to share with the panel today. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Daphne Ma, for sharing with us your three very, very interesting case studies and also some of the results from the case studies. It's great to understand what the local Hong Kong population sees and what their views are in terms of the solar energy and whether we should be importing more renewable energy or not. I have a few interesting questions in mind already, but then I will now welcome our next guest, Miss Wai Fan Ho, to do her sharing, and then I'll leave my questions for a bit later. Miss
Thank
Wai
you.
Fan Ho, are you ready to share your slides?
Yes. Let me open my PDF. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you to CCIL for inviting me here today. And I'm very honored to be here because actually Solarity is an advocacy group incubated by CCIL. And Solarity is actually inspired by Solar Future in Hong Kong, the research that Dr. Ma just presented. So I'm really honored to be here. And as a member of Solar Energy Advocacy Group in Hong Kong, we are not only focused on the local policy, but also the national and regional development. And it is truly inspiring to learn about the practice and experience of the other cities and countries in their journey towards energy transition. So today I would like to share some of my recent interests regarding the cross-border collaboration of sustainable energy deals in Northeast Asia. Here. Okay, let me first start welcoming you all to enter the era of global boiling. I think we all felt the hot last month, and it was not just a feeling, but the scientists have confirmed that July was the hottest month in record. The hot told us that the era of global boiling has arrived, and the Secretary General of WMO emphasized that reducing carbon emission is more urgent than ever before. So climate action is not a luxury, but a must. However, the urgency for climate action is actually particularly evident in Asia Pacific region, a region that represents nearly half of the global population, with vast of the majority of these countries are heavily dependent on fossil fuels in their energy mix. And they were responsible for more than half of the global emission in 2020. But I just read the report released last year by UN Economic Commission for Asia and the Pacific. It highlighted that the climate ambitions of most of the major emitter in this region was falling behind, and their current commitment will project to lead to a 16% increase from 2010 level rather than a necessary 45% reduction for the 1.5 pathways. And if we look at the situation in Northeast Asia, which is comprised with 6 countries: China, Russia, South Korea, Mongolia, and North Korea, while 4 out of 6 the countries are the biggest carbon emitter in the world. In 2020, China's carbon emission ranked world number 1, and Russia come into the 4th place, Japan number 5, and South Korea the 12th. But the NDC targets set by these 4 countries are highly insufficient. According to the Climate Action Tracker, they are on a pathway that could lead us to a temperature increase of 2 to 4 degrees. So it is more even worse than the Asia Pacific regions. Although Japan and South Korea have committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, and which is aligned with the international agreement's goal, China and Russia has set their targets for 2060, which will definitely miss the agreement goal. And although the Northeast Asia countries have picked up the pace in transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy, in this table we can see that the countries like Japan, China, and South Korea have set their own renewable energy targets in their NDCs, but they are simply not ambitious enough to keep the temperature increase in 1.5 degrees. No matter the countries have set its renewable target in the NDC or not, most of the countries have introduced support schemes to foster the development of renewable energy, like the feed-in tariff have been enforced in China, Japan, Mongolia, and even Russia, and also like renewable portfolio standard in China and Korea, and various tax incentives in all countries except in Mongolia and North Korea. But considering the future goals outlined in NDCs and these kind of incentive policies, we can take a closer look at the current energy supply situations in the Northeast Asia countries. We can see that most of the energy comes from fossil fuels, like coal, the black in colors, and the oil, the dark gray, and also the gas. The fossil fuel makes up around 90% of the total energy supply in this region. Countries like China, Mongolia, and North Korea, coal is the main source of energy. In fact, coal makes up about 85% of Mongolia's energy supply and around 80% in North Korea. And we can understand that this is mainly because coal is cheaper and it is a lot of it available in their country compared to other fossil fuels. Another reason for Mongolia that heavily reliant on coal is it heavily reliant on coal export as well. The coal export comprise like nearly 30% of their GDP. So coal plays a significant role in developing country. But if we take a look at the developed country like Japan and South Korea, there is a orange bar which represent the nuclear power. I think developed countries like Japan and South Korea have advanced technology and capital so that they can have nuclear power as an energy option alongside the fossil fuels. And then, despite the target set in NDC we have mentioned it before, and the implementation of incentive policy to promote the renewable energy, but we can see that the renewable energy is only contribute to less than 6% in the total energy mix. And then we can take a look at the total, like the 6% of renewable energy mix. Actually, hydropower and bioenergy are the dominant source. And the reason behind the dominance of hydropower is because it's mature technology. Hydropower plants are widely used in the region due to their ability to provide a stable and also controllable electricity generation. And this reliability makes them more comparable to traditional. Sorry, did I mute myself?
You just muted yourself, boyfriend. We have you back now, though.
Okay, sorry
Okay.
for that.
Yes, please continue. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to share that the data is in 2019, but after 2019, the solar energy and also the onshore and offshore wind power have experienced rapid growth in globally and also in the Northeast Asia, and they are expected to lead the future expansion of renewable energy. So, however, given that in this region actually possess abundant renewable energy, which is far more than 6%, but one of the main reasons for the slower progress in renewable energy adoption in this area is mainly because of the mismatch between the available resources, market demands, technology, and capital. And recognizing this mismatch, the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization, view it as a significant opportunity for the region to address its energy challenges and promote sustainable development. First, let's look at the resources and market. We can see that Japan, South Korea, and North Korea have high electricity demand but are limited energy resources. Actually, Japan and South Korea are the most import dependent countries in the world. In 2019, Japan and Korea import at nearly 90% and 83% of their primary energy. But on the other hand, Russia and Mongolia are rich in renewable energy resources but have relatively low electricity demand. And the complementarity of supply and demand in this region presents a huge opportunity for resources utilization. By developing the abundant renewable energy in Russia and Mongolia, and actually there's a potential to meet the energy demand for the countries like Japan, South Korea, and North Korea. And this creates a channel for energy trade and also cooperation between the regions, and which can be mutually beneficial for all parties involved. And also we can look at the technology and capital. China, Japan, and South Korea have made significant advancement in smart grid technology and also renewable energy generation. And China in particular is the least of ultra high voltage technology. And at the same time, Japan and South Korea have strong economies and abundant capital resources. Countries like North Korea and Mongolia require technology transfer and investment to develop their energy sector. So this also presents a unique opportunity for this region for the technology operation and investment within the Northeast Asia. Like the expertise and the capitals of Japan, South Korea, and China can be utilized to support the development of energy infrastructure or clean energy projects in North Korea and Mongolia. But even though we have the good conditions for energy cooperation in Northeast Asia, there has been significantly progress in cross-border collaboration. Scholars believe that one of the main reasons for the lack of progress in the is because of the geopolitical mistrust among the countries. Historically, the Northeast Asia countries has been hesitant to work together on the traditional energy. However, renewable energy provides a chance for a quicker and broader collaboration among multiple countries. Like it has the characteristic that make it less likely to be treated as a security issue and also allows for common actions. So some scholars believe that renewable energy can effectively address the major challenge related to the traditional energy and security concerns. So I know the time is running out, so I will just give a very brief overview on how the renewable energy can address the four dimensions of energy security. The first one is availability. Like Japan, China, and South Korea, they are heavily reliant on import energy due to their industrialized economies. And this dependence on external energy resources makes them vulnerable to supply interruptions. However, Northeast Asia actually have immense potential for renewable energy, and only a little bit of the proportion have been utilized. Like some study found that Russia has advanced hydropower potential, which only use like 10% of it. And even for Mongolia, if we fully develop the renewable energy potential, it could even meet China's total energy demands in 2030. And also the affordability is another crucial aspect for energy security. And by transitioning to clean energy, countries like in Northeast Asia can reduce their dependence on expensive import fossil fuels. And also the declining cost of renewable energy technology can make it as a cost-effective options. And for the accessibility, and it is a great challenge in the traditional energy extraction, especially for the area that with harsh climate conditions, like in Russia. Most of the fossil fuels are actually located in the Far East, which is the extraction fee is quite high. And also Mongolians face obstacles to develop their energy as well due to their fragile ecosystem. And last, the concept of accessibility. This concept is focused on the environmental impact and social costs of the energy generation and consumption. Governments and the public have become more aware of the effect of climate change and are taking actions to dealing with it. Like China and Japan, they are the large energy consumer and they have committed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and 60. And renewable energy provide a practical solution to address their environmental concern and also like contribute to the global effort to reduce the carbon emission. So I know energy transition requires decades time, and the major global energy transition, like from wood to coal to oil, actually have each taken 50 to 60 years. But I think the change to renewable energy source has to be exceptionally fast, as what we have said that before, we are at the era of global boiling already, so we are running out of time. So I want to end my presentation by quoting the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "The climate change is here and it is terrifying and it is just the beginning. So we need a dramatic and immediate climate action to tackle the climate change. So let's act together." Here's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hua Fan Ho, for your presentation about renewable
Thank you.
energy policies in Northeast Asia. I really love the way you put the different countries' data and figures together so that we can have like a good overview of the policies and the type of renewable energy that, or the type of energy usage that they're emitting. So it was a very useful and very visual presentation. So thank you for that. So now let's move on to our final speaker for today, Mr. Jerry Arances, who is the founder and executive director of the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development in the Philippines. Mr. Jerry Arances, are you ready to share your presentation with us? Let's see. Oh, yes. Okay. We don't hear you yet. I'm not sure if you're muted still.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Am I clear?
Yes, we hear you now.
Sorry
Yes.
about that. I
No
just
problem.
lost
Please feel free to start anytime.
connection. Uh, sorry, can I start now?
Yes. Please start. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thank you. And thanks to the organizers for inviting us and be able to provide some snippets and contribute to this very valuable discussion. I'm glad to be in this panel with such really deep discussion and presentations from the previous two lady presenters. So I'm really glad to be the only man in this panel. Um, Taking off from the previous presentation, I will illustrate what's basically happening in the Southeast Asia region and have a deep dive on key developments and ways forward, specifically in the Philippine context and experience. Before the slide, I have 6 key takeaways from assessing the Southeast Asian region in terms of energy transition. For one, it is a region which is really highly vulnerable to climate change. At the same time, touted as a mixture of low-emitting countries, but also countries that are highly dependent on exporting fossil fuels, the likes of Indonesia, who's been number one in terms of exports of coal, as well as the likes of Malaysia, who depends mainly on exporting fossil gas. In relation to what was discussed earlier, vis-a-vis the 1.5-degree pathway, most countries in Southeast Asia are actually below or doesn't conform with 1.5-degree pathways in terms of energy transition and targets, as clearly what have been shown by the climate analytics study, in terms of how Southeast Asian countries have fared in terms of 1.5-degree alignment. The likes of the Philippines, which somehow have a higher target, actually is aligned to 2-degree pathway based on the climate analytics study, which was released last year and will be updated soon. So in terms of NDC, there's a lot of work still, mainly because of the coal dependency of the region. The whole region in the last decade have been witness to a lot of coal expansion, not just in terms of exporting from Indonesia, but actually a lot of coal plants were built across Southeast Asia, and that includes the Philippines, who was ninth overall globally in terms of coal expansion in the last decade. The third point that I wanted to underscore is that the region is also struggling in terms of high cost of electricity. Notwithstanding the likes of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam, who actually have a lot of subsidies to its constituents. Yes, you can share the slide. I'm just making an overview before the deep dive on the Philippines.
Yeah, I just make sure that if you need the slides, just let me know and then I can share it. Just let me know.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry
Thanks,
for interrupting.
Dr. Yap. Yeah. And there's a lot of gas expansion in the region, in terms of gas expansion, is second in terms of LNG importation, as projected in the next coming years, which only second to the biggest expansion, which is the US right now. So there's a lot of challenge in terms of the actual energy transition from coal expansion, now gas expansion. But there are key bright spots, which I will delve some more, especially on the Philippine experience. The first one is that there's a lot of renewable energy initiatives, notwithstanding across the board in so many countries in Southeast Asia, but namely the Vietnam and the Philippines, which have made a lot of headways quite recently in the last more or less 5 years in terms of renewable energy targets and awarding of solar and wind targets. So there's a lot of hope in these two countries, which could actually provide for a lot of impetus for the other countries in Southeast Asia. The last one is that at least 3 countries are actually pursuing JETPs, which is the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which includes the Vietnam, which is under negotiation, and of course Indonesia, which has started. But definitely for the Philippines, there is a lot of discussion with the governments that the JETP for the Philippines will actually be pursued. And a lot of discussion as well on the energy transition mechanisms, both by the World Bank and now I into some more in terms of
Mr. Jerry Rances, I think you're lagging a little bit. I don't really hear you right now.
sorry for that.
No problem. Okay, perfect. We
Am
can hear you.
I
We can
clear
hear
now?
you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Can you show my slide, please?
Yeah, I can see that it seems that
Yeah.
someone is sharing the slide right now.
Yeah.
Um, so
Um, sorry. Can you go up, please? Yep. There. So, yeah, as I've mentioned, I will deep dive mainly on the experience in the Philippines, which is actually could be some key lessons moving forward. Of course, there are peculiarities in so many countries in Southeast Asia, but there are some key takeaways. So, in that context, in the last decade, the Philippines was actually the first who enacted the renewable energy law in the region, which was promulgated in 2008. But unfortunately, despite having that, the renewable energy targets went down around 12% by 2023, from 34% down to 22%. So, what was the key takeaway on those? Next slide, please. So it was mainly that the period was a feature. The main feature of that period was that the department or the government wasn't really quite ambitious in terms of implementing the mechanisms under the renewable energy law, which could actually provide with a lot of impetus and a lot of incentives to the development of the renewable energy industry, in particular the solar industry in the country. And so in 2014, and this is one of the major takeaway that civic groups, including communities and people's organizations, should band together and push for, including a filing of the case against the government into 2016, which forces the Department of Energy to actually implement all the mechanisms. So from 2016 up to 2020, 2021, all mechanisms now listed here are actually being implemented. Next slide, please. And after that, we've seen that in the last 2 years, wherein there is a green energy auction, which has produced already 5.5 gigawatts of renewable energy, which will start to go online end of this year up to 2026. 5.5 gigawatts is actually 20% of the total energy power capacity of the country. So that is very significant coming from a period wherein there was very limited advance in terms of renewable energy. Around 70%, more than 70% of that 5.5 gigawatts are actually coming from solar energy. So as it's really in full swing, which also means that uh, cost based on renewable energy will actually significantly drop. The comparison for solar in particular is that it's around 3 times lower compared to coal and fossil gas right now in the country. So the debates around policy that would enable affordability and the renewable energy shift is actually heating up in the country. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, there's a lot of proposed gas plants, and a lot of debates now is centered on whether renewable energy can actually provide for versus what gas plants and gas as a bridge fuel in terms of policy and debates is taking place in the country. Next slide, please. We did a study with climate analytics, which shows that actually for the Philippines to align to 1.5 degree, an ambitious renewable energy target will actually have to come in play. And now this is being discussed by a lot of representatives and senators in the discussion vis-a-vis our dependence, possible dependency, and the development of fossil gas laws and bills in the country. Next slide. So, what are the key takeaways in terms of policy development? One is that there has to be raising of the national targets. The existing target for the Philippines is 35% of renewable energy by 2030. And based on the climate analytics study, it should be around 83%. And because of the development of the green energy auction, wherein 20% will actually go online in terms of the overall capacity coming from mainly solar and renewable energy, the discussion centered around raising the target is hitting up, and the viability for the Philippines to have actually a 50% target by 2030 is very much more achievable in concrete terms. So engaging policymakers is actually very key in terms of pursuing the transition. The second one that we've been working since 2016 is actually the proper power procurement processes. Many of electric consumers have actually been enlightened of what renewable energy shift can do in terms of electricity prices. So many of the electric consumers in the country have been intervening in policy making and decision making, engaging the Energy Regulatory Commission to block power supply agreements coming from fossil fuel, which will actually just pass on fuel costs from imported fossil fuels such as coal and LNG or fossil gas. And a key development right now is mandating the fixed pricing, which is being discussed. Actually, there's a proposal right now with the Energy Regulatory Commission to mandate that all power purchase agreement should actually be fixed price. And this would clearly signify a signal, a major signal that renewable energy will actually take advantage or be advantageous in terms of procurement processes. The last point that we wanted to take note is that the coal phase out is starting, and the discourse around it, notwithstanding the jet fees and ETM mechanism that is being pushed by countries, bilateral negotiations, as well as initiatives of international financial institutions in the Philippines, but also in Indonesia and Vietnam, side by side with a lot of initiatives to actually put in place rules and policies that should enable old and unreliable coal plants to actually be retired early in the country. Next slide. So we in the Philippines, the main initiative of a lot of actors of the community, energy transition community in the country, not just engage the policy making bodies intervening in power purchase agreements, but actually pushing for subnational energy transition as well as local energy transition. And one of the key examples that the renewable energy advocates have pushed for is the renewable energy transition of the fourth largest island in the country, which is called Negros Island, wherein a lot of work has been placed in this island. There were a lot of proposals to actually build a coal plant, then a gas plant. But eventually, when studies were done in terms of the viability for 100% renewable energy in this island, it now becomes a major bright spot in terms I think time into stations. It's a combination of engaging policymakers in policy making, raising ambition, but also addressing the main gridlock for renewable energy expansion in the country, which could actually be applicable to many other countries in Southeast Asia, which is the power purchase agreement intervention, which should mandate that straight pricing and fossil fuel costs should actually not be passed on to electric consumers. So the whole discourse and addressing how fossil fuel importation can actually be the risk of high cost of import fossil fuel will actually be the burden of fossil fuel companies is pursued. The last bit is to combine it with people's organizations and citizenry, active citizenry, pushing for 100% renewable energy in countries such as the Philippines. So I'll end there, and I hope to have more discussion in the question and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry Arances, for sharing with us about the renewable policy progress in the Philippines. It's really, really inspiring to see your country's progress in the transition, and also to understand your push for for it to be a just energy transition, which is also a very big part of this. So now we will move on to the moderated section, where I will ask some questions to the speakers, and then afterwards I see some Q&A I see some questions, has already popped up from the chat from our participants. So then I will read out some of the questions that the participants are asking. So now I personally also have some questions for the speakers. So speakers, are you ready? Are you ready for the panel discussion?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So, my first question is a bit more about the role the regional policies play, because Miss Daphne Ma, Dr. Daphne Ma, and also Mr. Jerry Rance has shared a lot about what's happening in Hong Kong. But also we understand, like Miss Wi-Fan Ho said, that the regional interplay is also very important, and there are a lot of technologies that Northeast or Asian countries can share with each other. But because of geopolitics, there is sort of a conflict in that. What do you see are potential solutions to the geopolitical tension so that we can have a more regional collaboration in the energy transition? Anybody can start.
So I'll talk about that first. And I think the main problem of working together on promoting the cross-border collaboration is mainly because of the political tensions. Even though, like in Northeast Asia, we didn't see any big war in this area, not like the Ukraine and Russia. But there are still some old feelings of like the anger, the arguments over lands, and the competitions for the power to get the ways of countries cooperating. So I think it is really hard to release such tensions, such political tensions. But I do think because the climate change, like what I have said before, we have entering the era of global boiling, and we are facing the climate. We are affected by the climate change in our daily life. So it is important for the global leader, also the country leaders, to think about it, especially like in Northeast Asia. I think our region is quite focused on our economic growth. So when I see the climate goal, their climate goals, and I always look at their economic growth, where they have aligned together. That like in this area in our Northeast Asia, and we focus on the economic growth a lot. So I think they can see the potential of like using or developing the renewable energy can beneficial to both the economic growth and also the social development in this area. So I think if they really emphasize on the economical and also the social benefits, the political tension actually can put aside a little bit. I think.
Yeah, I like that perspective. Like, so shifting more towards the economic
Yes.
and social benefits
Yeah.
we'll steer people away from the geopolitical tensions. And
Exactly.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, and I, from my perspective, I think
mhm,
in terms of regional energy policies, I think
mhm,
there indeed great justification for us to pursue this regional perspective, because to meet the very ambitious carbon neutrality goals
mhm,
in all these countries in Asia, I think these are something really
mhm,
not easy to be done. And then when we think about geopolitics, I think it's nothing, it's just inevitably that we have to face it and to
mhm,
face it in a positive way.
mhm,
In terms of policy analysis, I think there are a number of things that we can do in short term and in midterms to support policy developments in this area, even though we know that it's politically very sensitive, and yet we have to build up our policy capacity for that. Number one that we can do, I think, is that we can nicely map out the common interests and
mhm,
areas that we can do in the short term and midterm. I think the presentation just made by Foon just now, she has a very nice table mapping out the technology market and
mhm,
resources. I think this sort of mapping exercise would be very good. That if some research can support very solid and well evidence analysis for the governments in this region, I think that would be extremely useful and helpful. And the second thing is, I think a continuous dialogue of good quality would be very important. I mean, dialogue among different stakeholders, like local people, general public, and we see that the business sector, power, especially power companies, and of course this different think tank. I think this sort of dialogue platforms would be very important. And then the third thing that we have, our team have been bearing in mind is how to benchmark the policy developments across this region would be very important. Say there are good some good practice in Philippines, and where else we have good policy developments in South Korea or sometimes in Hong Kong. Then I think how to properly benchmark policy developments, and then how to make sure that good practice or policies are transferred across this region would be something very helpful to build up the capacities for regional energy policies. So these are my quick feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daphne Ma. I agree with you. Again, it's like a focus on the positives and looking at positively at what other countries have done so you can share the successes of the countries in Asia. Um,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else wants to share? If not, I think since we're running out of time, I might jump straight onto the Q&A from the participants instead. Okay. Okay, in that case, I will now read out some of the Q&A we've had in the chat box. The first question is from Mr. Kevin Lee, and this is for Mr. Jerry Rancis. So, Jerry, do you see the risk that the so-called transitional fuels, such as natural gas, are distracting the transition to renewables in Southeast Asia? And how would you elaborate on this?
Yep. Thanks for that. And this is actually also where I can link with the previous question in terms of the tensions, how geopolitics as well as the role of East Asia, in particular, to how investments are actually flowing to Southeast Asia, the Southeast Asian region. Definitely on the question at hand, it's the transitional fuel debate has intensified in the last couple of years, particularly since the start of 2020 moving forward. And as I have mentioned, Southeast Asia is one of the major expansion hub of LNG importation, as well as some export terminals that are being developed in Indonesia and and Malaysia. But the main issue is, this is clearly a new detour and as a major stumbling block in terms of renewable energy transition, because it's really competing with the needed power that should be already coming from renewable energy, and crowding out the space that renewable energy should actually occupy already, uh, um, taking off from coal now to the needed shift to renewable energy. Gas is basically being touted as that renewable energy cannot do it, and that that the region needs a bridging fuel, and that in itself, if you look at it closely, it is actually being pushed by the likes of Japan and to some extent South Korea, notwithstanding the limited role of China right now in terms of gas, as mainly as an importing giant in the region. So that plays out. So notwithstanding the the importance of addressing geopolitics, which really plays out in terms of investments and capturing the market, especially for Southeast Asia and even South Asia regions, for the likes of China, India, Japan, and South Korea in the region. It's mainly, we should note that the role of Japan in particular as a key driver, as a key financier, which basically pushes for a lot of the infrastructure development on gas expansion. So this is basically making a new market for, after fueling dependency on coal in the region. So this is actually a major stumbling block right now that the region in Southeast Asia needs to confront collectively.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry Francis. So there are two more questions from the participants. And there is one question that is more of a bit more like a comment. So let me move on to the one more final question, which is a question for Dr. Ma. So the two solar projects for the housing estates are inspiring. How can we encourage more housing estates to join? And what party should be doing this? And also, let's see, what are some of the challenges for doing so?
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the questions. I think, uh, this is a real important questions that we need to answer, because what we see is that from our interviews with the households there in those two communities who have very good rooftop, but they still left them idle as of today. So what happened to them is that they need to see more successful experiences in their neighborhood to make sure that when they reach out to solar installation companies in the market, it would be easy for them to get good technical support at a reasonable price. So that sort of information cost to households will, and this is something the market have to properly deal with. Another thing is that we see that there are important roles that could have been played by the management companies, the management office there, because they are kind of reliable party in the community. And then our observation is that the two management offices in these two communities, if they were able to take a much more proactive role in facilitating and supporting the households there to actively look for these these solar projects, then that would probably, we believe, would speed up the this deployment of solar houses there. So I think these are very important role that the local management office could play. And of course, the big picture is that the government needs to make it a very clear policy direction that community scale solar are something that we valued, and we put prioritized policy attention on it. By this, we means that the government needs to put aside very specific funding support for community on, let's say, solar, and to reduce some of those regulatory regulations need to be more flexible in policy. So I think these are the quick thought about how to support these two communities.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Daphne Ma. So I think we've run out of time, and obviously time flies when we're learning a lot and learning a lot from each other. So I'll have to end the session now. And on behalf of CarbonCare InnoLab, I'd like to thank our three speakers, Dr. Daphne Ma, Ms. Wafun Ho, and Mr. Jerry Rancis, for all of your insightful sharing. And I'm sure all of the participants, including myself, took a lot away from the session. And like what Ms. Wafun Ho emphasized, we are running out of time, and it's the energy transition is at a very critical phase right now. So let's focus on the common interest between the regional players and benchmark some of the success stories that are happening right now. So this ends today's session, and thank you again to all the guests and all the participants for taking part. Thank you.